extra tricky for me tonight because I am having to Zoom from my phone so that I can have our budget pulled up on my computer, which means I can't see most of you most of the time, unfortunately. So I think we'll have to rely a little bit more on audibly raising your hand in a way. Or if someone who does have the full panorama view would be so kind as to maybe serve as a moderator in that way to call on people. Erin?
Hi.
Hi.
I can do that. I've got a 2-screen setup right now.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, Erin, sorry.
I'm also not going to go on video myself, so if I need to raise my hand, I'm going to just do it through the chat feature, I guess, if I have a question.
All good. I will keep that open as well.
Thanks, Erin. As soon as we, you know, I see a thing that popped up that says live on YouTube now. So I'm thinking
we are live streaming.
Are live now. Okay, great. Good deal. Well, gonna go ahead and call our May Board of Directors meeting of Divine Neighborhood Association to order. May 2020. This would have been our annual member meeting given different circumstances. But here we are, getting down to some kind of big business tonight. And Maggie, would you like to take just a moment for attendance? Laura is also not going to be able to join us tonight. So would anyone be willing to make a best effort attempt at timekeeping?
I can do that as well.
Thanks, Erin.
Yeah, let me pull up a timer on here.
Okay, and maybe while Maggie has attendance, you can get that started.
Cool, sounds good. I've got a pretty good echo on my end. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing that. A good way to reduce that is that if you're not speaking, to put yourself on mute.
I'm only getting it when you talk, Erin.
Does that mean I'm the problem?
It's the same thing for me. You're the only one that has an echo for me.
Bree is echoing for me, but I'm like the worst offender, I think.
I'm not hearing any echoes from anybody, so maybe it's me. I don't know. Okay. Is Maggie still here? So yeah, there you are.
I'm here.
Hi. Are you ready for attendance?
Just a minute. I had
Yep.
to support. Big screen disappeared. I can't figure out how to get it back. I tried to open it so I could look at the budget on your second screen, but then I made the big picture disappear. Like the flashy box that's gotten me. Oh, you did it. Oh.
You still need to look at the budget over here?
No, I'm gonna give up on that. I've looked at it, I've talked about it, I tried to come, but all right, sorry everybody. Apparently my tech skills aren't up to the 4 different screens to run here. Okay, attendance. Erin.
Erin, sorry, just to back up, Erin, can you clarify, Erin?
Yeah, Erin B.
Thank you.
Present.
Eddie. I saw you, Eddie. I know you're here.
Gwendolyn Hooker is present.
Gotcha. Yep. Brendan, I see you. Sarah, Jared, Christina is not here. Nope, Christina is here. I see you, Christina. I'm here. Jeremy Turpening is here. You're here, Gwendolyn. And Aaron H is also here. Breon is here. And yeah, here we go. That's everybody.
Okay.
No Remy?
We are missing a Laura.
And Remy. Remy, are you here? Remy is not here. And we have Steve and Jen as staff.
Thank you. Aaron, are you good to go on time?
Up to 1 minute for the consent items.
Yeah, thank you. So we have our agenda for tonight as well, and I guess I'll pause there if anybody has anything specifically that you would like to plug in to any of those sections. Any adjustments to or comment on the April meeting minutes, the May executive committee minutes, or our April financial statements that were included in the board packet? And if no corrections or comment, can I get a motion for someone to approve those consent
Make a
items?
motion to approve.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I guess voting is a little tricky this time, but any opposed? Maybe that'll be easier. Resounding silence. I think we're good. We have 10 minutes for our check-in, and Maggie, you had an idea for that. If you, that has just flown out of my brain. Could you remind us of the suggestion for our check-in this evening?
What is the thing you are most looking forward to when in-person gatherings resume? And since I'm already talking about this, and I am really looking forward to big hugs, just big, long, awkward hugs that
Rocky hugs.
end for like forever. Look out, people. I might be coming for you.
I'll go. Drinks on the patio at O'Duffy's or Martini's. And Sway Salon opening. That's a good one. Just the neighborhood opening back up again to where we can fully interact is top of my list right now. And hugs. I like hugs.
Mine is quick and easy, just my mom.
Aw.
Mine is also quick and easy. I'm gonna say live music.
Wow, nice.
Also live music.
And hugs.
And I haven't met my niece yet.
Oh, man.
Aw.
Oh, I haven't met my niece either.
Hey, hi.
I'd also say potlucks and movie theaters. I'm actually a movie nerd, so miss going to the theater for it. So I guess hugs. That's a trend.
Gotta have them.
I can't wait for restaurants and bars to open back up so I can find the single waitress of my dreams, which will eventually lead to hugs.
Let the search continue or resume.
I'm looking forward to spending time with my friends. I mean, being outside is really cool and I'm enjoying that, but being able to be less, I guess, stringent upon my social life. It'll just be nice to feel less restricted.
I'll go.
Gwendolyn, oh, never mind. It looked like Gwendolyn was trying to speak, but she's on mute, but it occurred to me she might be on her other meeting. Never mind.
I'm here. I'm looking forward to being able to travel. There's a national holiday happening on Friday. Everybody might not be aware, but it will be my 51st birthday, and I'm supposed to be on a cruise right now. So I am definitely looking forward to when we can get back in the air and start moving around somewhat normally. And I'm also looking for post-COVID would look like. Hopefully, a lot of the things that have happened in light of this pandemic will move us toward a better, equitable outcome for everyone. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Thank you.
I'm just looking forward to seeing my family and being able to move around normally to restaurants, anywhere really, and hugs.
Not in restaurants though, because that's weird.
I'm gonna, actually, Gwendolyn stole mine. I was gonna feel guilty for saying travel, because, you know, like, I kind of can't wait to get out of the neighborhood right now. The weather's just getting so beautiful, and it's so hard to think I'm about to have like a long weekend, but I can't go anywhere. And I think also one of my friends and I have this long history that goes back to a conversation where we decided like one of our favorite things in life is to just sit on the couch and drink water together. So I just can't wait to like sit on people's couches and drink water. Missing that a lot.
Was that every? Oh, we have Jen left.
You're the only, oh, yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to absolutely every single thing every person said, from the vine coming back alive, not being in the vine, to hugging, to drinking, to being able to use the bathroom at my friend's house again if I come over, just anything and everything makes life simple.
I'll let you use my bathroom. I've made Jen drive all the way home to use the bathroom.
Yep. I guess, you know, a crisis is good at reminding us of what's valuable to us. So maybe those are some of those things are things we might not have thought about as much or with as much of a sense of gratitude. So we have 3 substantial action items on our agenda tonight. As per the excellent request from our last board meeting, included in the agenda, you see the 3 options that were put together by the staff and the executive committee after last week's discussion. At which point we had basically, you know, come to the realization that a normal-ish meeting to be scheduled during our normal time frame was just not going to be able to materialize this year. We have had a lot of mainly financial issues, unsurprisingly, overwhelming the time and energy of our staff and our board for the last couple of months. And so the 3 suggestions that you see there in the agenda are kind of, you know, a good faith attempt at this is the best we can do, reasonably within and knowing our limits, and kind of remembering back to our training from last year, and that thing that we came back to a couple of times since then, and I think was a takeaway for a lot of us, which is remembering when and what to say no to, and that came up before. I think it's pretty prescient for this agenda item, and something that we're probably all really having to navigate in our jobs, in our lives right now. So I want to give maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes of discussion time to the pros and cons, the perspectives and the opinions on scheduling our member meeting for one of these 2 possible times, or option 3, which is to defer scheduling to our June board meeting.
So there are 13 minutes left on the clock currently. I'll give a warning when we're down to 5. That sound okay?
Perfect. Don't see hands raised, although, as I said, I'm having trouble seeing everybody right now. But
Gwendolyn has a hand raised.
and start with discussion. I kind of want to come back to everybody's thoughts with the situation being as it is.
So my question is,
Gwendolyn, I am having trouble hearing you. I think your internet is frozen.
I'm not getting audio either. So aspirationally, we kind of talked last month about the possibility of putting together a sort of last ditch effort for a virtual meeting. But I think more importantly, we discussed a number of ways to improve our outreach, improve our recruitment efforts for membership, and kind of improve the accessibility and equity surrounding our election. And in discussion last week, we realized that really all of those things, all of those suggestions are things that we really are going to want to move forward with those things in mind, no matter what time frame we're looking at. And really the decision that we have to make is not so much what format, because it's pretty presumable that we're not going to be seeing groups of more than 50 in the neighborhood anytime soon. And even if that was allowable under the law, I think a number of people expressed concerns about whether that's something we would really even want to consider ethically. And so, you know, given that we're looking at a remote format for the meeting, there were a lot of really great suggestions about setting up drop boxes in the neighborhood, doing outreach by phone, by email, and we do have a membership registration form set up, and it was advertised on our social media. So that is right on our main website now for people to sign up to be registered. So I guess
Gwendolyn, what were you going to say before your internet cut out?
So in looking at the notes from last month, I was going to definitely volunteer or help move the outreach efforts to really get more folks involved and get more people in the neighborhood to kind of find out what's going on once we kind of settle on our format and our date, to really be very intentional about reaching into the neighborhood, which that's what Hope Through Navigation does. We have gotten pretty damn good at it, if I don't say so myself. And we can mobilize, groups of folks, always keeping in mind, gloves, masks, 6 feet social distancing rules, but really to to our neighbors in a way that they are fully aware of what's upcoming, and making sure that they have the option not to attend or not, and making sure that if they do want to attend, they have the accessibility to do so. Because sometimes people do want to come, but they may not have internet access, they may not have the ability. And so we do want to not just make things available to people, we want to make sure that it's in an equitable way so that they are able to participate if they so choose. And I am happy to help do that in any way that myself and my team can.
So Sarah, it wasn't totally clear to me from your explanation, nor from the EC meeting minutes. Are we officially going with a virtual meeting, or is that yet to be decided?
I think that the plan for the foreseeable future would be that at minimum, with options 1 and 2, looking at scheduling in July or even August, we'd be looking at the likelihood of a virtual meeting, or of I guess we could call it a virtual meeting. I kind of prefer like a remote election being the underlying factor at play. And I think calling it a remote election encompasses all the different balloting formats that we discussed, which includes paper ballots, includes voting over the phone or by email. And I think that at minimum, the first 2 options, we would be looking at the extreme likelihood of a remote election, a remote style of meeting. And probably, from the few types of large gathering style video conferencing attempts that I've observed over the last month or so, it's a little bit unwieldy, a little bit difficult to expect a full member engagement in the form of a digital online video conference meeting. It would more likely be in the form of like a presentation, with allowing people to maybe participate in a Q&A at some point during it, which would have to be moderated. And so the third option that's included there, which basically acknowledges the fact that we are looking at a date near the end of this month, with the expiration of the current executive order, at which we would either be looking at a extension of some sort, with probably some sort of different set of guidelines and restrictions, or some type of reopening effort, which has been announced to be expected to be pretty gradual. And so by the date of our June board meeting, there is the possibility that we might have more information with which to make this decision. And so that is kind of an option that we wanted to acknowledge, that there are reasons not to wait till next month and push things out a little bit farther. And then there are reasons to think that maybe there would be benefit to making that decision after we have a better picture of what a reopening, or what phase of that we're in, is going to look like at that point.
So we've got about 4 minutes left for this point of discussion. I'm going to go ahead and cast my vote for revisiting the subject and setting a date in June. I don't think that we're going to lose anything by taking another month to see where things go and to consider different approaches and kind of bring things together. I also don't think it's a great idea to potentially have all new leadership EC roles at this time during this like weird time. I think it makes a lot of sense to have consistency in leadership for an additional month. So.
Christina.
I
have you
absolutely
wanted to
agree
say
with what
something?
Aaron said.
Thank you, Gwendolyn and Maggie.
I was just pointing out that it looked like Christina was raising her hand. Or were you just fixing your screen?
No, sorry, I was just adjusting my screen.
Oh,
But I
sorry.
agree. I think Aaron is spot on too. My 2 cents.
Aaron, are you submitting that as a motion?
I was not, but I can if there are, if no one else has any other thoughts or ideas about it.
Yeah, is there anybody else who would just like to add any comments or questions to discussion before we maybe put it to a vote?
I do. I agree with Aaron. I think it makes a lot of sense to postpone it for now. I do think, going back to what Gwendolyn was saying, I think we should do a better job of recruiting people to come to these meetings. Because I think in the future, this format could work where we could bring people in to speak and talk in these meetings in different ways through YouTube, watching it on YouTube, bringing people in who might want to have Q&A and things like that. And I think we kind of have to keep exploring, how can we get more people to apply to be a part of the board? And then at the same time, how can we get more people to come to these meetings and maybe future meetings that might be our annual meeting?
I'm gonna move to add a minute to this point of discussion so we can catch Remy up on what's been going on.
Hey, you guys, sorry.
Oh, hi, Remy. Sorry, I didn't see you come in. Welcome. Yeah, we are on agenda item 4A. So the decision on scheduling or deferring scheduling for the member meeting and board elections, according to the 3 options that are there in the agenda. And at this point, I believe we have heard from 4 board members who have expressed support for option 3, which is to revisit the scheduling of those things during our June board meeting. Did I miss anything?
I'm for that.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to suspend discussion of this until June.
Second.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the motion, Jared? That cut out a little bit.
Motion to suspend discussion of rescheduling the annual meeting until June.
Okay, what I would like to do for this is just to, instead of all in favor aye, because that didn't really work out awesome audibly with this, I would just like, if Maggie, if you're able to just do a quick roll call for this vote.
You kind of need a second.
Second.
Oh, sorry, I thought.
I seconded before Jared was asked to repeat himself. It was like a whole,
Okay, sorry.
we're good. Thanks for.
Maggie, do you mind just doing a quick roll call for this vote?
Still getting the words. Jared, did you want to call that maybe the reschedule the discussion of the meeting of reschedule discussing the annual meeting and elections until our next meeting? Was that an acceptable interpretation of your motion?
Or if it's easier, we could just say motioning to go with option 3 in the agenda.
That's great.
Okay. All right. Aaron.
Aaron B. Aye.
Sorry. Eddie. Yes or no? Got it. Brendan, yes or no? Sarah Ruggles.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Need to write that down, people. Aaron H.
Or yes.
Gwendolyn Hooker. Got it. Jeremy?
Yes.
Breon? You're muted, so you will have to unmute yourself.
Sorry, I thought I did. Yes.
Got it. And Jared, I'm going to assume you're a yes.
It's my motion. I can't vote.
Oh, sorry. Remy? You'll have to unmute yourself. You give me a thumbs up. Oh, that's
Push your thumbs up. Yeah, I'm for yes.
awesome. I will vote yes. So the motion passes with Sarah abstaining.
Okay, that sounds like it brings us to our budget, which is everyone's favorite thing that we do each year, right?
Highlight of the
Unfortunately, there are a lot of changes to the budget this year. And per our financial requirements, we need a board approval for any budget line item that changes by $1,000 or 10%, which is most of the changes that you see in the budget for from 2019-20 to this upcoming 2020-2021. For those who, I'm not sure if everyone has been privy to one of these being implemented from last year, probably not, but that goes into effect pretty much at the same time as our terms renew, which is beginning of June. That's the turnover of our fiscal year is June 1st. So Jared, would you like to go through each line item maybe and just ask, kind of open for each of those for anybody who has any questions or comments or considerations? And there's just a couple of things that I wanted to note about it, which is first off, the calculation of rent income in line item 47502. The good news is that that has increased from last year just based on our current rents, which have gone up just a little bit in leases that are already in place. And the bad news is that I don't believe that we have included the portion of our rent concession that applies to June into that budgeted amount. So that amount of that you see there of, I believe it's 242,620, really would need to be adjusted to 236,620, down by 6,000, which is the June rent concession. So our overall rent amount basically comes down line item
Is that we made
7502 by 6,000. Sorry?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying line item 47502, rent income from what was emailed out would be adjusted down by 6,000. And that's the only change that I would like to have everyone note according to the budget that was sent. But again, we'll want to review those changes of the line items from last year that are changing by 10% or 1,000 or more.
Right. So you just want me to go over what some things are, or just the changes that we made?
I guess just give everybody the opportunity to know what each of those changes are when in terms of the line items that have changed by that amount. And we'll just kind of go one by one, opening to questions for each line item.
Sure. Let me get my other sheet open. I opened the wrong sheet. All right. So some obvious increases were we are upping income from our city contract because that went up this year. And we are expecting that to stay up next year. So hoping that that's going to work out in our favor. We are increasing our capacity building budget because we do have some capacity building funds from the city left over. Or that should be remaining in our purview for the next year. Our rents, as Sarah said, are going to be increasing slightly, just based on occupancy differences between when our last budget was drafted and when this one take hold. We are theorizing that our accounting fees should go down quite a bit. One of the reasons that our budget was higher this year was because of the expenses with refinance on the building, and those will be absent from next year's needs. Therefore, we've left them out for next year's budget.
If I could just pause for 1 second, just to ask if anybody had, because I think you've gone over all of the income projection changes. Did anybody have any questions about any of the changes in our projected income? Because there's a considerable change in those projections. I think the only other one is there's a small change in the building blocks allotment that got cut in half from last year. Any questions about any of the income projections? Because it's really the expense projections and the cuts that were some discretionary decisions that I think we will pause at each one. Maybe that was a discretionary decision and give people the opportunity to discuss those.
Mhm.
So, okay, sorry. Back to, I think you had mentioned the accounting projection had gone down.
Yep, the accounting projection has gone down due to we're simply not expecting to need as much back end work because we're not expecting to refinance our building again this year. So that was a refinance cost that we should not see again. We did carve out $1,500 from our supplies. Or I'm sorry, we cut out $500 from our advertising and marketing budget simply based on not planning on having art hops. We also zeroed out our staff development budget because given certain events in the news, we were not expecting to be able to really send anybody out for staff development. And in fact, I believe we had some cancellations already. We are going to be we zeroed out our placemaking and branding partially because we still have supplies left over. We usually use that line item for making merchandise that we sell or give away, shirts, sweatshirts, that sort of thing. And we have some stock left. Also, again, it just seems prudent to not push that again this year, given the fact that we may need to make up funds, just depending on how things go. We decreased our bad debt expectancy just based on how rents have been going. Let's see. The management fee line item, which is 67051, is deleted completely because that was a service that we used to contract from Open Doors that we never used once and have since eliminated. So that's just a nice saving for something that we never actually used. Telephone bill is going to go up just because the telephone bill went up. Let's see. We are, based on some of the monies that we have carved out of different places here, we are increasing our replacement reserves budget to $35,000, which is up significantly from its initial budget of $21,000. Replacement reserves eventually is a budget line item that is used to make sure that we have money in the bank in case something critical needs to be repaired on the building. So probably the most common thing would be HVAC, in case a furnace or air conditioner goes out in the middle of whatever season it's needed for. That would be drawn from, or if there's storm damage or something that needs to be done immediately, that money is there for that and earmarked for that. So we are increasing that into a line that is more readily in line with other rental management situations. We are cutting $100 out of the meals and entertainment budget, much to me and Steve's chagrin.
Dang.
And we are adding a line item for vacancy loss, which vacancy loss, of course, is a theoretical loss of income due to a theoretical vacancy of a rental property. We are expecting to have one large vacancy coming up, and in our commercial properties, and so we hadn't previously been planning for that, partially because prior to this, our budget was expecting money for less than 100% rents. And now that we're at 100% rents, it is much more prudent to plan for having less than 100% rents, if that makes sense. So we are adding a $20,000 vacancy loss line item. So it's basically just budgeting around the idea that but nothing else in the budget needs to change if we only suffer $20,000 loss in missed rents over the next year. Any questions on anything specific? I know I kind of spitballed past everything.
Just a couple of quick mentions. I think also the utilities was decreased by 4,000, just based on our averages from the last 4 years. And then the interest expense from line 67019. The reason that's a big one that jumped from 12,200 to 20,000. That's because of our refinance. So it is based on our loan payment. The interest portion of that went up considerably when we refinanced. So anticipated interest expense went up a lot with it.
Right, and that's coming from the fact that we added money to our loan with regards to the project loan that was tied in. And, that's one of the biggest reasons that money went up. And obviously, we've only been in this building for 6 years, so we're going to be paying a fair amount of money on interest anyway for the foreseeable future.
So one thing I wanted to kind of point out to everybody that is relatively good news is that with the trimming that we did on a lot of our expenses, along with a few boons in the budget on our income end, as you can tell from those notes in that worksheet that was sent, our overall income from last year projection is, and taking that $6,000 that I mentioned before into account, so taking that off of the balance that's shown on there, our overall income is projected to increase by 17,770. And our overall expenses, according to these projections, have been trimmed down to only increase by a projected amount of 6,415. So that is about a $10,000 margin between our predicted income increase and our predicted expense increase, which like sounds really great, right? Like how in the world are we gonna like actually have more money in this budget than last year? And the answer is we're not, because in our last year's budget, we didn't account for the 26,000 of our rent concession that we've already given out in this fiscal year. So when you compare last year's budget to this year's budget in real numbers, we still are down a little bit. This also hasn't really taken into account the fact that we got that $5,000 grant from LISC. So there are a few things that are gonna hopefully push us back to maybe coming close to breaking even, including our next agenda item. Fingers crossed.
Also, that the budget in place again, we may actually gross more money than we're planning on next year, provided we don't suffer a $20,000 loss in revenues from rentals being empty, which, you
Yeah.
know.
Thank you. That's a really good point, because, you know, there were a lot of suggestions and discussion in last week's executive committee meeting about our expected vacancy and ideas around minimizing the loss from that. Yeah, go ahead, Erin.
We are out of time on this action item. So if anybody would like to motion to extend, that's an option at this time. Or a motion to do something would also be a thing.
I would like to at least take a minute to just ask for whether people have questions on any of those line items, and if not, maybe we can go ahead and move forward.
I'd like to motion to extend.
Was that Remy?
Yes, it was.
Remy, by how long?
3 minutes.
Well, I'll second that.
Thank you. The question that I have, Sarah, thank you for that, is the $20,000 that is the expected for the expected vacancies that's coming up? Like when is that happening?
You want me
That's
to?
that's not an expected vacancy. That's a buffer in the budget in case we need that vacancy.
If I could actually speak to that, because there's some information that we received very, very recently that kind of solidifies the expected vacancy in one of our larger units. And I think we'll probably be able to come to a discussion about that a little bit later in the agenda. I'd rather kind of maybe return to the details of that vacancy, but just let everybody know that there is basically an extreme likelihood of that vacancy, and then a difficulty given the current climate that we're going to be looking at reoccupying that space at the same capacity, at the same kind of rent income. And that we're probably looking at relatively soon. It could be, basically, we're kind of in negotiations with that tenant. And so I think I'd like to, unless people have specific questions about that, I'd like to return to that when we get to our property management report, because I think Jen will have a better explanation to give, and we'll have some more time to discuss the details at that point.
Okay. Can I ask one more question about that? Steve, do we still have purview over the Oak Street growing space too?
Yes, we do. We still own that own that lot. Yes.
Okay, there is a COVID pandemic relief, like food systems grant that's out right now. That's open until July 13th, I think. And do we have any vacancy to be able to establish a neighborhood food ecosystem here, write a grant through Vine Neighborhood Association, repurpose one of the vacant spaces that we have, if there are any, and grow food, like aggregate food and do something in that way to build in that way? I'm just going to throw that out there and then press mute again. Okay.
Thank you for mentioning that. I'd like to return to discussing that either when we get, into that property management discussion, or else in the comments and questions timeframe. And I also thank you for your question. The $20,000 projected vacancy loss, we might not be looking at that full amount, but there's definitely, that's basically the maximum that we're expecting in loss in that space. All of our other tenants have confirmed renewal.
Thank you, Sarah.
Aaron, I'm guessing it's
You're out
time.
of time again. Yeah.
All right. Well, just real quickly, are there any other questions on any specific line items in this budget? You know, obviously, I think the ones that are the sad news are that we had to kind of slash our events budget, slash our merch budget, slash any of the discretionary spending, any of the non-fixed costs that we possibly could. But by doing so, we came up with a relatively rosy picture for our budget for the next year, all things considered. Any other line item questions? And if there are no other questions on line items, would anyone like to motion to approve our 2020-2021 fiscal year VNA budget?
I so move.
That was Jeremy, I think.
Yep.
And a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, and we're
Team
gonna do a
Aaron.
roll. We're gonna do a roll call again on this one. So Maggie, take however much time you need to get started. And I'm sorry, I would like to make sure to add into this that a reference back to the earlier note that line item for number 47502 is $6,000 less than what appears in the budget sheet that you have before you.
You would like to have a note. So are you asking Jeremy to modify his motion to approve the 2020-2021 budget as amended?
Correct. Yes.
Your the budget line item about the rental income reduced by 6,000, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I think Jeremy is specifying with that stipulation, his motion includes that amendment. And we had a second for the motion. And whenever you're ready for a roll call.
So Aaron, you seconded, so I'm just going to assume you're a yes. I'm a yes. Eddie?
Yes.
Brendan? Thumbs up. Sarah?
Yes.
Aaron H?
Yes.
Gwendolyn, sorry. Thank you. Christina, you're going to have to unmute and tell me.
I'm a yes.
Thank you. Jeremy, it's your motion. I'm going to assume you're a yes. Brian, can you unmute?
Correct.
Brian?
Yes, I'm sorry. Zooming from home is hard. My dogs were having a fit. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Jared?
I abstain.
Say that again. Was that a yes?
I abstain.
And Remy, you're the last one.
Yes, my vote is yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Passes, and I think, let me just recap, the only abstention was Jared.
Thank you, everyone. We are at item 4C, which is a pre-authorization for the payroll protection program loan request submitted to Lake Michigan Credit Union, our financial institution, in the amount of $14,865. It is with the great hope that the federal program stipulations are followed through with due diligence, and that this payroll protection program loan will, after 8 weeks time, become fully forgivable, and basically essentially transferred into a de facto grant for our organization. That amount of $14,865 is the amount of 2.5 times of our monthly payroll, which is like the maximum amount that the loan can be, that the loan amount can be under that program. I did include the fact sheet and info sheet on the PPP loan in the board packet. If anybody has, is wondering about the details of that, there's quite a bit of the information in there. And this, you know, the, as I mentioned last month, this is a loan that came out in early March. The funding at the federal level expired within 2 weeks of them opening the program. Maybe it was even less than that. And they stopped accepting applications. However, after kind of badgering the credit union for a little while, I ended up finally hearing back from one of the loan officers that they were ready to accept our application. And that came last week. So we've kind of been scrambling to assemble all of the documentation required for that application. Steve, I don't know if you have any updates from today, because this has been an ongoing onslaught of paperwork and emails over the last couple of days.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I've been working with Amy James, who's the branch manager at the Lake Michigan Credit Union. And there's still paperwork that she's waiting on me to get, but I expect to have it all into her by tomorrow morning.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. So on a technicality, we require a pre-authorization for any loan that is processed in excess of a pretty low threshold. I don't remember what that is, but this is way beyond that threshold. And that authorization is required for any loan by the board. So in order to process this application, we need to get board approval for that loan request. Does anybody have questions about the PPP program or about the requirements of the loan or anything else?
I do. I'm curious about the forgiveness component of it.
So so unfortunately, there is a bit of an opaque bubble surrounding the forgiveness stipulations of the loan, and we have not yet gotten to the 8-week mark from the original time that the loan program was implemented. So we have not yet seen anywhere in the country how the forgiveness requests and processing is playing out yet. Unfortunately, at the same time, the credit union is making very clear that if we don't submit our application within the next day or two, they're not going to be able to fulfill the request. So there is some serious timeliness behind this.
So then how are you planning to just absorb the cost then? Are we going to just absorb it then if it's opaque and there's nothing clearly defined surrounding the forgiveness of it?
So the positive, on the positive end of this, I guess once we know what the fee associated with the loan might be, I would assume that any fee associated with it is going to fall probably well below even an executive committee approval threshold. It would likely be under $1,000, probably by quite a bit. And I think from what I've heard, it's been maybe 5% fee for loans in excess of $1 million, something like a 1.5% fee for loans that are less than $1 million. But we don't have the final numbers until we do this paperwork signing on that. But at a 1.5% rate, that's going to be a pretty small fee on that loan. And at worst, you know, if the terms of the forgiveness of the loan were to fall through, we're not going to be spending that, you know, that completely out of our budget to the point where, you know, we can't recoup that cost from another part of our budget. So at worst, we end up having to repay the loan, and we would just probably end up paying in full, avoiding any interest payments, and really just only be out the fee. That's a worst case scenario. That's assuming that the federal government completely fails in its good faith on providing forgiveness for these loans. We don't, and you know, we all kind of maybe have that question in our mind.
And that could very well happen. That could happen.
Right. So that is the question mark that kind of looms over this for everyone who has applied. I do know of, you know, at least a half dozen other nonprofits who have already secured the payroll protection loans locally, and you know, are similarly counting on that forgiveness, you know, to be fulfilled in good faith by the government once that 8-week time turns around.
Could I just add to that, all of the expenses that we're going to be covering over the 8-week period that's required are all things that we would have to expend anyways. Any payroll or anything that would be covered by the loan. All of the funds that Sarah has asked for are going to be things that we will have to pay regardless of whether we get the loan and regardless of whether it's forgiven.
But thank you for the question. You know, Remy, that's a valid question, and we're going to have to pay very close attention as soon as we start to see what that forgiveness process looks like, because there are going to be other institutions that are going to be applying for the forgiveness end of their loan way before we do, because we're actually pretty late in this application process. So we will get to see that play out before we ourselves get to the point of having to go through that process. Any other questions about the PPP loan application? And if there is no other discussion or questions, would anyone like to motion in relation to agenda item 4C?
I make a motion that we move forward on the PPP program in accordance with what Lake Michigan Credit Union needs as far as that goes, and following the federal regulation.
Support.
That was Jared was supporting.
Yes.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and do another roll call. Thank you so much, Maggie, for your patience on this. And whenever you're ready, take your time.
Aaron B. Oh, my.
Yes.
Eddie,
Yes.
Brendan,
Yes.
Sarah,
Abstain.
Aaron H.
Yes.
Gwen Hooker, Gwendolyn,
Yes.
thank you. Christina,
Yes.
Jeremy, it's your motion. I'm going to assume you're a yes. Bree,
Yes.
Jared, you're a second. I'm going to assume you're a yes. Remy,
Yes, my vote is yes.
thank you. Passes with Sarah Ruggles abstaining.
Thanks. All right. Steve, I will turn it over to you for item 5A, which is your monthly report of whatever's been going on in on your end.
Sure. Okay, things are starting to ramp up again. We've been having Zoom meetings with a lot of other nonprofits and with the city. You can look in my report and talk about, we'll continue to meet with Kalamazoo Neighborhood Housing Services, Community Homeworks, Building Blocks. Building Blocks program is on hiatus. It does not look like it'll happen this year, but we're hoping that we could reallocate some of the funds that had been designated for the project this year into relief efforts. I'm part of I always mangle the name of the consortium of folks that are meeting twice a week via Zoom meetings, and this is sort of the central focus point for, let's see, where is it here? The Kalamazoo County Response Consortium team, and that is it's a collaboration of nonprofits and government agencies, and they have probably at least 2 Zoom meetings a week and talk about the latest struggling to come up with the word for whatever the latest decrees from the governor's office and when timelines are coming into effect. And it's been a very helpful Zoom to be a part of, I guess. When we were here last Thursday, and we had a number of folks that stopped by, we had lights on. So it was sort of a wake up call for me. We were not open. We told folks that they could come back later. If they had immediate needs, they could make a call or send an email. But one of the things it was sort of a shot across the bow for me, is I realized that as soon as the doors open here, we're going to have people in. There are going to be people that want to come in and for a multitude of reasons. And so Jen and Dan have been very proactive, and I've been involved in this conversation as well, as we try to figure out what will the lobby look like, how can we respectfully receive guests while still maintaining some health standards and kind of best practices in that regard. Jen has been very proactive and has procured a lot of hand sanitizer and set up sort of not an obstacle course. We're not looking for an obstacle course, but she set up a few tables that function as barriers as well. I am definitely getting the feeling, as more and more meetings are happening and things are kicking up, that you know, the opening is just a few weeks away, and I feel like that things are gathering up speed. Yeah, I think we did not have community cares last month, but I was asked to help disseminate the word that we've had an uptick in larcenies from automobiles. So that's just as people are trying cars throughout the neighborhood. Just remind your friends and neighbors to try to lock those up. And I guess I'm preparing. I'm very much looking forward to the ending of the school year in about 3 weeks, and hopefully that'll dovetail nicely with the reopening here. It's been a challenge. It's not harder for anybody, not harder than anybody else's challenges, just harder than I seem to be able to manage, of that balance of being the at-home educator of sorts, and then also coming up here and trying to maintain the balance as needs and requests and meetings all ramp back up again. You're muted, Sarah. Was I muted too?
Steve, you were muted the whole time. You're gonna have to go again.
Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
I'm sorry. I hit the button and it didn't do anything. Wow.
Somebody can give me a signal.
Technical difficulty on my end there.
I had practiced that for
Does anybody
hours.
have-
It was before the budget speech, and I delivered it perfectly.
I kind of want to just take the last minute, ask if anybody has any questions for Steve right now. You know, things are different. Anything you're wondering about with the VNA right now that he didn't cover?
You saying it's been more larceny than before happening right
So,
now?
that's the issue. Nice hand. That was the main issue that Ryan brought up, is that there's been an uptick in calls for service from people noticing things that were that had been stolen from their cars. So, you know, I think probably having more people at home has been good for the overall approach to kind of keeping informed as to how your neighbors are doing and what other folks are up to. I guess that's the weak spot, is that, you know, nobody's looking at their cars in the early hours of the morning. So periodically, that's been an issue in Vine for as long as I've lived here. There's kind of two schools of thought. One is that you lock the door all the time, or if you have a 18-year-old Subaru like I do, you just keep the doors open and hope that they don't take your Prince and or Sheila E tape and leave everything else alone. So you know, I tend not to get too bent out of shape about the larcenies from cars, although it is a violation and it does feel crappy to have your stuff taken from your car.
I check mine every single night before I go to bed.
I check yours too on the way home. Yeah, you're doing pretty good.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just want to chime in that we're getting a full-size refrigerator donated that's going to replace the mini fridge at the VNA, so it could be part of the Vine distro.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you,
But
Eddie.
I have to get it out of a basement tomorrow.
Oh, boy.
I'm not That's just an update on the Vine distro.
I'm
I
pointing-
haven't been as active, but
Do you need
And
help getting that fridge?
I think we can handle it. We have a couple people that with a dolly. So thanks though, Jared.
You know some people, Jared?
No, I just want to let you know I wouldn't be available tomorrow.
oh, thanks, Steve. And I want to thank Jen again for joining us tonight. It's really super helpful to have you here with us, and just really make sure that our staff is plugged in fully and that we're all really kind of keeping in tune with things that are going on with our limited ability to have committee meetings, to have you know, our kind of check-ins that we usually do. So it's really great. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to number 5B, property management report.
Erin, did you need you had your hand raised. I don't want to.
I was just trying to gently signal that time was up, but we did a perfect segue, happened naturally. Thanks to Sarah for that. So go ahead. That's all
Sorry,
you.
I'm seeing the hands.
So we did not have a regularly scheduled committee meeting, but my committee is also the executive committee, and I've been attending executive committee meetings as well as regular board meetings. So I feel like we've been doing a good job of having dialogue, as well as I've been attending financial budget review meetings. So so from a property management perspective, not a whole lot going on. A lot of the budget, we did a lot of work there to pre-plan for next year's potential loss, if we have any on the commercial side, and then also some projects that have been in the works or that we've known have been in the works for the last couple of years on the replacement reserve. Doing really well with all of our residential tenants. Everyone seems to be on track and in good hands, and all of our tenants seem to be in a space where they either have income or have unemployment, which makes them happy. Everybody can eat and pay their bills, so that's good. Our commercial tenants are eager to reopen and look for ways to do that in the community that's friendly and safe. And so I'll be trying to help them with that as much as I possibly can, but really we're just kind of waiting for the word. Most of our tenants already know what's going to be expected of them during the reopen. In lieu of that, we've been just making the property pretty. So we have our painting project that's going on our barber shop, our tattoo studio. Just got a new facelift on the outside. So if you want to see that finished project, you could walk or drive by the building. That's kind of my excitement. We've been working on some catching up of some stuff in the parking lot and cleaning of the parking lot too, so that we're prepared for those businesses when they do reopen. And then just all the other little outlining projects. I'm almost going to wrap up our construction loan with our last draw. I'm pretty excited about that, trying to wrap that up before the end of the fiscal year. And other than that, I think everything else is kind of floating along, waiting for everybody to come back.
Jen, if you wouldn't mind giving just a quick putting it on the radar about the Gilmore grant discussion that we had as well.
I was going to, but I wasn't sure. So we have been in talks. Steve and I have both been in talks with Carol Snap from the Gilmore Foundation about some grant writing for possibly or potentially looking at a brand new parking lot for us. So our first step is going to be looking at a bidding process for, we really need someone to start on a design for the parking lot. So we're gonna be looking at an RFP process to gather someone hopefully in the community that's willing to work with a nonprofit at a very reduced rate to give us our dream sketch of what the parking lot might look like so that we can go to the next step to even apply for the grant. So I think Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe July 1st is the deadline for submission. Is that right? Somewhere in there. So I think we decided over the next 2 weeks that we'll be working on an RFP. So if you know anybody, engineering, someone connected to Western, anyone that might fall in line to do work like that, that might want to be directed to me to bid on that project, please send them our way.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
I just have a pretty quick report this month. Really.
I actually had a question on Jen's report, if that's
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
How did like the painting, the facelift of the like vine side of the building, did that have anything to do with Eric and Anna's prior proposal to paint the murals on the building?
It's all the same project.
It's all the so we did end up going through with that.
Yes.
Okay, I hadn't heard that yet.
Oh yeah, that
was my question.
Project. So it wasn't Anna and Eric proposal was not murals per se all over the building. It was to paint the entire building. It will encompass 2 murals in it, I guess, in theory, 1 mural and 1 paint variation on 1 wall. But mostly it's a facelift storefront. And in that, I don't know if I should add that we are getting new awnings as well for the building.
So we are out of time, but I want a motion to add another 2 minutes for discussion because I have more questions about that.
I'd also, sorry, I'd like to motion to add another minute because I have a question even though I can't raise my hand.
Cool. So 3 minutes. Do we need a second for that?
Can I put,
I'd say Breon seconded. I think it was Breon.
was that you, Breon?
It was me.
We added another minute, I thought.
Hey, why don't we say Aaron Benson for a motion to add 3 minutes, Breon Fonville seconded.
Sorry, thank you.
Sure.
That works.
Whatever
for me.
gets us there.
It works for Aaron.
Aaron, go ahead with your question.
Just resetting the timer. So last I heard, we were kind of tabling that proposal and considering opening an RFP in the interest of equity. When did we approve that proposal?
So the takeaway or
the project?
Yeah, the project got approved because a second proposal was submitted with a lower bid. And that proposal came before the executive committee and was approved basically in consensus among the staff and with the strong recommendations from our staff. And based on the takeaway from the last conversation that that the issues of equity surrounding this situation were definitely valid, and that those were all issues that need to be taken into consideration and that we do need to do better. And I think that in the executive committee's discussion of that, we kind of deferred to the opinions of our staff on this in the fact that this proposal had been on the table for almost 2 years, and to renege on the agreement for this after the people involved had already put in quite a bit of work to not just creating the proposal, but also leading the team that helped to create the murals and the redesign and refurbishment efforts around the rest of our building over the course of the last 2 years. Would be a pretty bad faith move on our part to bow out of that at that point. And
So that-
that those equity concerns will definitely need to be discussed for any future proposals, which is, I think, the point that we're at with some of our other projects at this point.
So that decision was made by the staff and the EC in consensus once the limit was low enough that it didn't have to come to the full board anymore for approval.
That was what ended up happening, was that they submitted a second quote, and that quote came to the EC, and I can't remember what month that was. I don't know if any of the other.
Try to look it up.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm just curious about it because I remembered having that conversation for quite some time, and this is the first time hearing about it. I saw the painting on Instagram, and I was kind of like, wow, I don't know what's going on there. So thanks for clarifying that.
Mm-hmm.
We are out of time for this. I don't know if anybody wants to motion to extend.
I motion to extend by 3 minutes. This is Remy Harrington.
I'll second that.
Second that. Thank you. And Brianne, I think you had a question too.
I did, and I honestly think that my question can wait for another time, but I guess I just wanted to tack onto that, that Sarah, since you mentioned we're coming up on some other projects that might require that, I think that maybe in the next meeting or sometime soon, it would be good for us as a board to start talking about what that process looks like to ensure that it's open to the entire community.
Definitely. And things being what they are, since our committee meetings have been tabled for a couple of months now, we're going to have to kind of start looking forward into what that's going to look like to start resuming some of our committee meetings. And I think it would be really great to kind of continue with the plan that we had set up previously I apologize that I don't remember the details of whether it was an ad hoc committee or whether it was something that was referred to the property management committee to continue that discussion in committee. And I think honestly that was probably one of the last things that was discussed before our committee meetings were tabled for the time being. So I think it's exactly the thing that we would come back, the discussion we would come back to once we resume.
And hopefully we can time resuming to some extent around these projects that are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Making some intentional time for that.
Yeah, Jen, would
especially
you
right
mind?
now as last is I think this is a time, I don't know, it's really important right now in particular. I think a lot of artists are experiencing, they're being hit really heavy by this, and I think that giving more folks the opportunity to benefit from this experience right now in particular would be really important to make sure that that's open and inclusive. So
yeah, Jen, would you mind adding that to I think I just saw an email that you were going to schedule a property management committee in June, which we don't have a date for yet, but if we could make sure that that's on the agenda for that meeting.
Would more people like to be invited to that? Because Sarah is accurate that last board meeting, a couple board members decided that they were going to take that as an ad hoc committee to kind of form the details on how we wanted to be more equitable going forward. And those guidelines would be very helpful for me as we have projects coming up to kind of already have that in place on how the board wants that information disseminated to make sure that we can reach as many people as we possibly can. So I do think that, Sarah, I mean, this is just my personal opinion, but I don't think that that should be done at the property management committee meeting. I think that that is something that the board should look at a separate committee for and provide the staff with guidelines that we can move forward with.
Yeah, and I think that I do, like I said, I apologize that I don't have like minutes and stuff in front of me right now, but I know that we at least discussed, and I feel like maybe we did appoint an ad hoc committee. I don't know.
Nicole
that
was
ad
going to
hoc
lead it,
committee
Sarah.
Convened? I'm sorry?
Nicole was going to organize a meeting.
The AmeriCorps,
Thank
right?
you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that sheds some light on things because as far as I know, Nicole is not really keeping hours with the VNA currently. Steve, do you have any update for us on that?
She's doing very minimal hours. She still has many hours left that she's going to be using as soon as we can have her back in, but she does very few hours per week, less than 10 probably.
I'm happy to run a Zoom meeting or attend a Zoom meeting that would be separate from the property management committee meeting to discuss it. I think it would greatly help my job and understanding of how we're going to move forward, because I do have a few things that are going to need to be bid this year. Not specific towards the artist community, but I do think that this is something that continues to kind of be a little bit of an obstacle for me personally to move forward in doing parts of my job.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to say something, if that's okay. I have to say something. I feel like the default went back. We went at length at that conversation, and we spent a lot of time just really deconstructing the nuance of being able with that particular project. And the default appears to have gone back to a space that was, normalized and convenient. And we expended a lot of time in that meeting. And now so if that was already the response, the default to go back to that, when we already had recognized that it wasn't equitable in the first place, and now there's going to be an additional space created for us to offer more insight into how to be equitable. That feels like it's not a good use of our time when we're offering we've offered suggestions about how to do that in the time frame that was allotted, and we spent so much time having that conversation, and we didn't come up with any alternatives that felt more equitable. I think maybe we should look for resources outside, so that if we need professional support in that way, like a consultant maybe to come in, because it feels like now, we have representation on the board that has, provided insight, and that apparently is not sufficient. And so we need to get professional support in a way to be able to provide those services, so that because I feel like that.
Thanks, Remy. What that brings to mind for me immediately is that one place has offered individual consulting appointments, and also has lists of consultants that they keep locally available to nonprofits, and would probably be a good place to turn to get some referrals. And definitely E-Race and other local anti-racism organizations. And if any other board members want to recommend any other organizations that might be able to connect us to the right consultant, the right person for this, I agree that it would be a worthwhile use of our time and our money, and definitely something that we need to do better on going forward with all of our projects. And that parking lot, that's one of the biggest projects that we have had on our plate other than some of the major improvements made through the construction loan. So looking at ways to do better with this RFP process for that are really great things to tackle and pretty timely right now. And I think they would be able to connect us to hopefully somebody that would be available to us relatively soon.
Yeah. So I'm happy to own that. I am happy to. The way I'm thinking this could come together is planning a one-time session for folks who are interested in having a say in making sure that our RFP process is more equitable, to kind of get together, come up with what our most important points are, delegate responsibilities therein about reaching out to different consultants and looping Jen into that process, and just making sure that we have some folks dedicated to actually doing that and contacting those people and making sure that happens, because I think it's really important.
Erin, it sounds like what maybe you're offering would be to at least serve as like the interim chair of that ad hoc committee and schedule a time for people who are interested in that to convene in the near future.
So I'm going to push back against the wording of it being a chair or a committee, just because I think it's a practice that we should all be engaged in all the time. But I'm happy to send out an email after this meeting to have folks pick a time where we can all just talk about it.
Thank you.
I second Erin. That was not a motion, but I second what you said.
I accept any and all seconds at any time. We are also like way over time on that. I just let it run. Are there any further questions, comments, concerns on that point that want a couple more minutes, or should we go to board chair report?
Okay, pretty quickly, I'm not going to go into too much detail because really it's just been a lot of time spent on financial stuff, namely the budget and the PPP application in the last month since last we spoke, as well as executive committee discussion from last week. I did participate with a peer learning group through One Place on May 7th for nonprofit leadership, and that was a valuable discussion. And it sounds like a group that they're going to be continuing on with. So if any of the other board members are interested in participating, I think One Place is they're offering some awesome resources right now. And from what I'm seeing, from what I'm noticing, just people aren't either able to or finding out about participation with those to the extent that I think they have capacity for. So if any board members are interested in participating with any of the One Place, with any of these scheduled One Place events, I would really love to have others from our organization there, so that, you know, really the more people that are involved in those discussions from one organization, the better. On that note, specifically this Thursday from 10 to noon, there's a really exciting event, an event that I'm pretty excited about that One Place is hosting virtually, called Culture, Community Values, and COVID, which is going to be a forum that is facilitated by E-Race. And anyone who would like to participate in that discussion, along with myself and Steve, I believe, is going to be attending that as well. I really encourage anybody who's interested to sign up for that. You can find the link on the library website, on One Place website, or I can email it to you directly if you would like. You can either text me or email me for it. And other than that, I will try to leave just a few minutes for comments, questions, and discussion if anyone would like to add anything at this point.
I want to ask Steve if he thinks that the building blocks money that needs to be reassigned could be punted to the gardening proposal.
Oh yeah, I think that's a very very logical extension there. I think that would be a very appropriate use of those funds.
How do we make that happen?
Well, let's see, I'm not sure when the next Building Blocks board meeting is, but as a board member, I can bring it and can make sure it gets on the agenda.
I'll also mention that there is an unaccounted for portion of the capacity building allotment of $9,200 that is unallocated so far, and that would also be a perfect candidate of an expense to put under that line item.
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
I also wanted to just put out a quick note that I agreed to serve the next 3 years on CDAC as our neighborhood representative because my renewal was overdue. And on a similar note, this week, the city is asking for public input on a nearly $1 million pot of money coming from HUD through the CARES program for COVID relief. So I encourage you all to take a look at that. I can send everybody an email with the link and put in input on what you think would be priorities for that money.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and send that link to the One Place event out in our thread for this meeting. And Maggie, if you wouldn't mind providing the link to that resource as well.
Maggie, thank you for serving on CDAC too. I know that that can be onerous and time consuming for sure.
Anybody else have any discussion items before we adjourn?
I just want to clarify when Steve means that the building blocks programming is not happening, he's referring to the Catalyst program.
Thank you, Eddie. Yeah, thank
The
you.
Sustain program's been pretty busy. We've actually put up a greenhouse at the corner of Wall Street and South Rose, and we've been doing multiple projects and stuff with community gardening.
You've got signage over there. It looks good.
Making that garden from a butterfly garden only to a food garden and having residents involved. Christina helped a lot. But I don't know. I just want to say that Building Blocks is still pretty active, but it's the Catalyst program that is postponed. So
Thank you, Eddie. Aaron, I finally saw that you had your hand up.
We're out of time.
All right, well, thanks everybody for some really good discussion tonight, and we got a lot done and we have a lot more to do. So we're going to kind of be looking over the next month, I think, at trying to put together some form of resuming some committee meetings. I think that's one of our next steps. So if you are currently the chair of a committee, please reach out to me or Steve, and we will need to have some discussions, and I will be reaching out to you as well about what that's going to look like, and we will reconvene in June for our 13th meeting of 2019, 2020.
Thanks for the effort on the budget, everybody. That's not fun. Always appreciate it.
It was much less painless than I anticipated.
Good.
Okay. Well,
what's the Vine district?
The Vine
I'm
district.
so glad that you asked. So I just sent a message to the chat that if you or someone you know needs supplies, food, toiletries, medical supplies, what have you, pet supplies we've been doing also, or if you would like to donate supplies of that kind or money to the Vine District team, that you can email us at vinedistrictteam@gmail.com to get in touch. The Vine District team is a mutual aid network of folks who live in the neighborhood primarily, who have been working together to pool money, pool resources and supplies, and redistribute those to folks in the neighborhood who are in need. So we are primarily working with Google submission forms at this time, and I can send links to those out via email as well. We're just letting people self-report need via a Google Doc, and then using funds that are donated to buy groceries, toiletries, supplies for folks and drive them out to them. So we've been packing boxes on Friday evenings and running deliveries on Saturday mornings. If you're interested in getting involved with the volunteer effort, you should also send an email to that email address.
I love that you're doing pet supplies. Not that no one else is doing it, but I just haven't heard of that yet, and that's an awesome thought.
Yeah, it is. And if you need pet supplies, please specify what kind of pet you have, because we get a lot of requests that are like, I need pet supplies, and we're like, so, but we work it out.
I need kid supplies. Right.
Any other announcements or, I hesitate to say events that anyone would like to mention, but I guess we have something like those going on still. I want to, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Gwen has also been doing relief efforts out of the office in conjunction with Loaves and Fishes, and since she's not on the call, just wanted to give a shout out to her that she is having food delivered to the Vine and then distributing it to seniors, right? Was that who she told us that if we know any seniors in the neighborhood, so if you know anybody who's homebound basically that cannot get out, that is having trouble getting their groceries, obviously Erin's distribution team is a resource. Secondly, Gwen has been doing a lot of great things, not just in the Vine, but throughout the community with sanitizer and masks and gloves, and pretty much if you know someone who's in need of something, if she doesn't know how to directly glean the resource, I've been watching her make a lot of connections within the community. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there also.
I just asked really quickly, I guess to Erin, how has word gotten out that this is available to community members? Like, is there something we can share on social media, or?
There is a Facebook page. There's
I think that's something that
page.
should definitely be shared through the Vine page and the Neighborhood Association Network.
I have access to both of those social media pages, so I can definitely make that happen.
Make it so.
I also
point.
need
So that's called, what's the social media page called?
It's called Vine Distro Team. If you're my friend on Facebook, you almost certainly got an invitation to like it.
There's also a need for more income for that group. So if they're always on the line of about a week out of having funds for supplies. So if we can connect, if there's a way to ask for those who are able to donate money, that would be nice as well. Or help me move this refrigerator.
When are you moving the refrigerator?
Thursday at noon. But I think we have it. I'm just grumpy about it. That's all.
I'd also like to give a small shout out to, and I'm gonna apologize that I would butcher the name if I tried to remember it exactly. And Maggie, maybe you can give it for me, but I think it's the Southwest Michigan Mask Project. Is that right?
It's the Southwest Michigan Protective Gear Project. It manifests.
Project. Thank you. Yeah, I actually I put in a request with that team about 2 weeks ago for a set of masks to distribute to my residents that I serve at work, senior high-risk population. And I got them dropped off last week on my porch with a really cute little note, and it just totally made my week. And I'm putting them together in little care packages for my residents to distribute next week. So I'm really thrilled about what they're doing and amazed that people are showing up in these ways. And if anybody needs a set of masks or a few masks for your family, or you know of people somewhere who need them and don't have a Connect, that's a really great resource. You just fill out the web form, make the request, and they come through.
Does anybody have any resources for like kids play dates, virtual play dates, anything like activities, anything that's being done surrounding the little humans?
You
I would immediately go to Kidnet for a list of activities and things that kids can tune in for. And Remy, I can send you information for that separately.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Remy, we should have our kids do a play date.
If I would,
I
if
would
could-
love that. We love Maddie.
If I could just throw out there, you know, I feel like this is exactly the kind of discussion that I have been really like wanting to emphasize for us to have ongoing as a board. Just sharing our resources, sharing our ideas, and I'm really glad we took a little bit of extra time tonight to do that. And if you were one of the many people just now in this discussion to have mentioned a resource or to be asking for a resource, please don't hesitate to just go ahead and go to our meeting email thread and just share that resource to the group. And we'll have a little thread maybe of reply alls for a day or two. And I think it's really great use of our network and our connections with each other to share those resources and try to disseminate them as broadly as possible. I don't have kids, but I'd love to know about the KidNet resources, so I can share them with people who do.
Two things to that. I have an amazing list of resources for autistic children. If anybody has a family that maybe doesn't have resources accessible, I have a link that has about 100 different links on it. It might be a little overwhelming, but it's the best resource that I've come across. And then secondly, if anybody does have any links or anything that they want to share with me or handouts or resources on the other side of the table barrier that I've built for Steve, I've also placed a table that will be accessible for the public when they come in so that they can continue to get resources, which is why most people walk through our door. So if you're out in the public and you're working with another organization in the area and maybe they have like a handout or a take one or something, you'd want to screenshot it and send it to me so I can look into it so I can pick up some of those resources, because I assume that once we reopen the office, that is primarily what Steve will be interacting with the public about, is need for additional support.
All right, I want to give one final shout out. It just has to happen to our very own Remy Harrington, who has overcome some really huge barriers recently to an incredible urban farming initiative that she is heading up called Zoo City Farms. And she's got these 3 parcels around Kalamazoo that she's hoping to use to make accessible to the community, and particularly centering Black women in our community. And she just had a big win with the Zoning Board of Appeals to be able to use the land for commercial growing. And so it's really exciting potential. And so yay, Remy, congratulations. I'm excited to be a part of it, and go you.
Thank you, Bree the Bree. Thank you, guys.
Saw you on the news, Remy. Way to go.
Wow, nice.
All right. You know, we are right at our long end time threshold. So it's been a pleasure, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next month in our current form, or at least one more month. And please take care, stay safe, and we're going to go ahead and adjourn. It is 7:30.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Everybody just hanging out.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
I'll talk to you tomorrow. I'll let you know when I get that submitted.
Yeah, let's talk tomorrow. Have a good one.
Thank you.